So here it says, give the location of Boston as an ordered pair X comma Y. So let me just go over a brief, just briefly what everything means. So this is the x-axis. This is the y-axis. Now, just like a number line, if this is 0, everything to the right is positive. This would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Everything to the left is negative, -1, -2, and so on. So that's basically just the number line. Now we add another dimension, a y-axis. And when we go up, positive. And when we go down, it's negative. Okay. This here has positive x and positive y, and it's called quadrant 1. That we always write x comma y as an ordered pair. It's called an ordered pair because it has an order. X always comes first, y always comes second. And it's a pair because there's 2, obviously. So if I wanted to put a point at 1, 2, I would go x, here's x is equal to 1, and here's y is equal to 2, and where they meet is the point 1, 2. And that's what we're looking always to graph. These points here, we don't graph. So if I'm over to the left here in this quadrant, x is negative, right? And the y is still positive because it's going above this 0 point. And this is called quadrant 2. Quadrant. And we use Roman numerals. So that's quadrant 2. Here, both x and y are negative because we're to the left of the 0 point on the x and we're down from the 0 point on the y. This is called quadrant 3. And here we have the x is positive and the y is negative, and this is called quadrant 4. Okay, so that's basically how it's set up. And if I wanted to plot a point like, plot a point like -2, -3, I would go -2 in this direction, and then -3, 1, 2, 3. So my point would actually be right there. -2, -3. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, so here, let's look at what we have for a question. The question is, where is Boston as an ordered pair? X always comes first, and the horizontal line is always X, vertical line is always Y. So I would put in as an ordered pair, parentheses, X is at 2, and Y is at 0. Okay, so I can't really plot on here, but what I can do is I can point to it. So I would go here and I go 1. So X is 4. So I'd go to the X is 4. And then I go up from here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And right there would be the point that I would put a dot on. Now, sometimes I do know people get confused about this. So it says find an ordered pair x comma y that is the solution to the equation y equals 0. So if I have x plus 4y equals 36 and y equals 0, I plug this in for y. I get x plus 4 times 0 equals 36. Obviously, that's 0, so we have x equals 36. Now, what does that mean? My order pair would be x equals 36, y equals 0. And that's really all there is to that.
Mhm.
Whenever we graph a line, the easiest form we can put it in, and there's two different forms for a line. There's y equals mx plus b, where m is equal to the slope. And let's just talk about the slope for just a minute. So I usually use slope like a mountain, okay? So let's say I have, and we're going to go skiing down this mountain, okay? Here we have a slope. Let's say I go to the same height, but my x value is bigger, and I ski down this, right? So which one would I want to ski down if I was not very good at skiing?
The one to the right, not the one that you drew the stick man on, the other one.
Yeah, the one to the right, because we can see that this has a smaller slope, right? And we can see that this has a larger slope.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we measure slope? We measure slope by what we call, it's easy to remember as rise over run. Okay? So rise is always in the y direction, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So we call this the change in y. And run, well, we don't run up, we run across, right? So this is the change in x. Now let's put some numbers here, because in math we really do need some numbers to be able to understand what's happening. So obviously they're both the same height. So let's say the height of this is 4. 4 what? I don't know, but it's 4. Okay. Then if this is, let's say this is also 4, we're going to say this may be 3 times as big. Okay, so I'll say 12. I'm not sure if it's exact, but we're just estimating. So now I can actually talk about what slope means as far as a number goes. So for this one here, we could say the slope is equal to, well, it's going up 4 and it's going across 4. So we would have a slope of 1. And for this one, we would have m equals 4 over 12, right? Which is equal to 1/3. This triangle has a smaller slope than this triangle, which is what we said. Like if we're beginners, we don't want to go down the big slope, right? We want to go down the smaller one. So this one's 1, this one's 1/3. So I can say that the one on the left is 3 times as big as the one on the right. And also one more thing I want to say about slope. We always read things from left to right. So this has a positive slope because I'm going up. Okay? This would have a negative slope because I'm coming down. If I read from left to right, you can see that that's the only way it makes sense. So that's really helpful also, because if you have a negative slope and your line is going up, you can tell right away you made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then we have the B. So B means the y-intercept. The y-intercept is where graph touches the y-axis. For the question I have here, I have y equals 3/4 x plus 0, really. Because if everything is y equals mx plus b, then b must be 0. And here's my m. It's the number in front of the x. Okay. So I draw a graph, or I would plot it there, but I can't. And we'll say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Might be enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And I'll just put some numbers in here. And so on. Okay. Now, easiest way to graph this. My y-intercept is 0. This is y, this is x. So this is where my graph needs to touch the y-axis because it's 0. And then if I know that my slope is 3/4, which is the rise over the run. So that means I'm going up 3, 1, 2, 3, and to the right 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you see?
Yes.
So I went up 3 and I went to the right 4 because up is positive and right is positive. I can also, just to say, because a negative over a negative is a positive, right? I could also go down 3 and to the left 4. Because -3 over -4 is still equal to 3/4. Both of those will work. You don't need both, but they'll both work. And then all I need to do is connect my dots. And that is the graph of the line. So, okay. So you understood this explanation, which is at my 0, 0 point. I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, and to the right 4. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. And I'll put another dot. Notice also, remember I said you could go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and to the right 4. To the left 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice there's also a point there, exactly like I said. I wouldn't transform it into negatives personally, because why do that? But I just wanted to say it's the same. Okay. But also, what's -3 over -4 equal to? Isn't it also equal to a positive? Negative divided by a negative is a positive as well, right?
It's a positive. Okay.
So that's why I'm saying we could have a point here at -3, -4. So here we have
Okay.
y equals -3x minus 1. So my slope here is what?
Negative 3x.
Not x, just -3. It's just the
-3.
number in front of the x. Okay. And this is the slope. And what's my y-intercept?
1.
-1.
-1.
Yes, because we're always looking at y equals mx plus b. All right. So I'm just going to graph it over here because I can graph it without showing you. I mean, without writing it out. And if you don't understand, just let me know. So my y-intercept is -1, which means now my y-intercept is right there, isn't it? And my slope is -3. Now there's two ways I could do it. So I could say -3 over +1 or 3 over -1. These are both negative, aren't they?
Yes.
And they're both 3. So I can say, okay, I'm going to go, I'll do the first one. I'm going to go down 3 and to the right 1. Or I could go up 3 and to the left 1.
Mm-hmm.
You see that both of those values are on that line.
Yes.
Okay, good. And that's all you have to do.
So we start from the 0 point on the line,
You
or we
can't start from the 0 point because the y-intercept is -1.
Okay, so we start from -1.
Because that
And then
point, you have this point, x equals 0, y equals -1. That's the y-intercept.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
that's a good starting place. I can use it. I can use this. Okay, so we'll use this graph. So we have y equals -4/3 x minus 3. Now I would start with my y-intercept, but tell me what you want to start with.
I will start with -4.
X equals or y equals?
X equal.
Okay. So x equals -4?
Yes.
Make it -3 just
So,
to make the math a little easier, if that's okay with you.
okay.
I mean, we could do it, but it's really hard. If we do -4, it's going to be a fraction. It's going to be real hard for me to graph it. But if I do -3, it won't. -3/4 times -3 minus 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which equals, so the 3 cancels with the 3, and then I have really -1. -4 times -1 is +4, minus 3 is 1. So I now have an order pair -3, 1. Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
So we have x equals -3, y equals +1. There's nothing wrong with that. But now I mean, we could put another point, but then we have to do another solving an equation. Whereas if I just say my slope is equal to -4/3, that means I'm going, if I just use this form, then I'm going down 4 and to the right 3. Did I count? Didn't count right here. Let me make sure I count right. Down 4, yes. To the right 3, yes. Now notice, remember I said when you go up, it's positive, and when you go down, it's negative? Remember that?
Yes.
Well, it's going down, so
Yes.
I feel pretty good about this, okay? So now I'm going to just say, check answer. No problem. Now, you can do that anytime you want, but the easiest point to graph is x equals 0, y equals -3. Because when x equals 0, I don't have to solve things. That's why I usually, if I can, I use my y-intercept. Now we have something in a little different format, don't we? These,
Yes.
again, this is really harder to graph because you would have to like pick 2 points and all that. So I personally, I would rather start here. And I would rather say, okay, well, remember, I always want things in the form y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. And I get -3y, these cancel, equals -2x minus 6. Okay? And then I have to divide both sides by -3. And I just divide each piece by -3. I don't need to do anything else. What that does is cancels the -3 with the -3. and I have y equals, and then I have a negative over a negative, which is really the same as a positive x. And then we have minus 6 over minus 3, which is plus 2. So if I solve for y, then what happens is I now have it in the form that I know exactly how to graph. So I can come over here and I really like just taking the y-intercept because it's 2, right? I know there's this point when x equals 0, y equals 2. And then I have a slope of positive 2/3. So I go up 1, 2, and I go to the right 1, 2, 3. And that should be my graph. As long as I don't make a mistake mathematically, I'll get the right graph. All right, so let's continue. Y equals 5. Well, that's the same as saying y equals 0x plus 5 because there's no x. So if I multiply x by 0, it really is just disappeared, isn't it? So I know now I have a slope of 0 and I have a y-intercept of 5. I know I have a y-intercept of 5 and I'm not going up any, right? Because if m equals 0, then that equals 0 over basically any number, doesn't it? It doesn't matter. Here, let me actually say it. Let me just actually say this is over any x value. So when x is 1, the slope is still 0. Same, right? It doesn't really matter what value I put in for x, does it?
Oh, okay.
You see that? X isn't really in the equation at all. I can put another dot anywhere. If the slope is equal to the rise over the run, and we know that it's not rising, right? Then it doesn't really matter what's on the bottom.
Right.
0 over anything is still 0.
That's true.
Okay, so I can pick any number. And another way to think about it is, let's just look at our original equation, y equals 5. So when x equals 0, what does y equal?
5.
When x equals 1, what does y equal? When x equals 1, what does y equal? 5. Y always equals,
Okay. So it's always okay.
right? It doesn't seem to really matter what x equals. Y is always going to equal 5, isn't it?
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes.
So I could pick any point. I just happen to pick 5, but it could be literally any other point. So I'll check it just to make sure that I'm correct. So find the x and y intercept. Do you know how to find the x and y intercept? The x intercept happens graphically when the line touches the x-axis. So for this problem, where do we touch the x-axis?
-3.
Exactly. And the y-intercept,
Is that negative? Well, -2.
it looks like -1.
Yes, it touches
Right.
-1. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so the y-intercept graphically is when the line touches the y-axis. And there is actually something more that you need to know, and this is for later. Whenever we want to find the x-intercept, let's think about it like this. Sometimes you have an equation and you want to know what the x-intercept is, and you don't have a line and you don't have a graph. So you don't have to graph the whole thing. But notice it's always going to be on the x-axis, which means y is always going to be 0, isn't it?
Yes.
So you can also say when y equals 0. So if you were just given an equation, you plug 0 into y and you'll find the x-intercept. And obviously, when x equals 0, you find the y-intercept, right? Because no matter where I am along this y-axis, x is going to be equal to 0, isn't it?
Mhm.
Okay, very good. So my y-intercept here, we also said was -1.
-1.
And we'll check our answer. Find the x-intercept and y. Oh, there we go. Now we have an idea of how to do this, don't we?
Mhm.
So we have -5y minus 3x equals 15. And we want to know what's the x-intercept. So what did I say when we have an x-intercept? What did I say to do when we don't have a graph?
You use 0.
For
The y.
exactly y equals 0. So I have, well, -5 times 0 is 0. I don't need that. I end up with -3x equals 15. I'll solve for x by dividing both sides by -3, and I get x equals -5. So now I know my y-intercept is -5. Easy, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Good. And the y-intercept, what did I say about the y-intercept?
You replace it with 0.
X was 0.
The x with 0.
Yes. So I get -5y minus 0, because x is 0 here, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
equals 15. I divide both sides by -5. These cancel, and I get y equals -3. Graph the line whose x-intercept is 5. Okay, so we have our x-intercept is 5, and the y-intercept is -4.
So we're going down.
Pretty easy, right?
Yes.
Now that we know what everything means, it's going to get easier and easier, I hope, instead of harder and harder. Okay. Find the x and y intercept, then use them to graph the line. Okay, we know how to do this. We have 4x minus 5y equals -20. So, which one you want to do first?
We can do the y first.
Y-intercept. Whenever I do the y-intercept, what do I know? Don't say it, say x.
X is equal to 0.
Yes, because it could be anything. So we have 4 times 0, which is 0. And that means I have -5y equals -20. Divide both sides by -5. These cancel and I get y equals 4. So I'm going to graph y equals 4 is my y-intercept.
Mhm.
Then let's do x-intercept.
Mm.
So with x-intercept, I say
Y is equal to 0.
exactly. So I end up with 4x minus 0 equals -20. Divide by 4,
Divided by 4.
and I get x equals -5.
Mm.
And so I plot the other side of that, and that's my graph. It's pretty easy, right?
Yes.
Good. There you have it. So it says, for each line, determine the slope, whether the slope is positive, negative, 0, or undefined. So
Mhm.
what's the first one going to be?
The first one is going to be 0.
Good. The third
This
one is what?
Negative.
No. So
It's
look, if you read it from
it's
left to
not
right,
going.
it's
It
going
looks
up.
like it's going. Oh, it looks to me like it was going down.
Which way are you reading? Left to right or right to left?
I was actually reading from right to left.
Is that how you read a book?
No, left to right.
Exactly. Just read it the way you would read words on a page.
Okay, so then that means it's positive.
Yes. And
The other one is negative.
now let me explain that other one that we didn't talk about yet. So let's go back to our slope example and using a mountain that we're going to ski down as the example. Okay. So if I had a mountain that looked like this, and I'm up here and I'm about to ski off of it, right? What's going to happen?
You're gonna tumble over.
You're going to die probably, right? That's because this is undefined. It does
Mhm.
not have a slope. It has an undefined slope. Basically, if I talk about the rise is some y value, but the run, which is the change in x, is 0. Anything over 0
0.
is undefined, does not equal anything,
Okay,
right?
it's undefined. Okay.
Undefined. And undefined. And let me add that we know that y equals 0x plus 5. Our slope here is 0. That's like the first one, right? Which is y equals 5. But if I want to do the other for the undefined, basically it looks like x equals. It really just is x equals, let's say this one would be x equals 1. It has no slope, it's undefined. We leave it out and we just talk about, and it's never going to intersect the y-axis because it's a straight up and down line. So we just make it x equals some value. Now, if we go back to when we started learning about why it is for y equals 0, what is y when x equals 1?
0.
What else?
It can be any number.
It could be any number. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be negative. It doesn't really matter. And so if I plot a point 1, 0, it's right here, isn't it? 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, negative 1. See,
Negative.
it's straight up and down line. Okay, now we want to find the slope. How do we find the slope of this? Well, the easiest way to find the slope of it is to just count. So if the slope is equal to the rise over run, right? Or the change in y. So I'm going to go down 1. I'll start here, go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's negative 5. And then I go over 1. So the slope here is negative 5. That's really it. Also, we have a slope equation. Our slope equation, which I'm sure will be coming up shortly, is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now, again, you have that means I just have 2 points because I can't call them the same thing. So I'll say that the one at the top here, on this, right here, is 0, 3. And I have another point at 1, -2.
Mhm.
And again, I can call either point 1 or either point 2. So I'll start by saying this is 1 and this is 2, but literally it doesn't matter. So my slope would be y2 minus y1 divided by x2, minus x1, which is still equal to -5/1, which is what we got here when we just counted. The reason this works is you're just finding the distance between the 2 points. That's really it. So whichever way you like to do, if it's a really small numbers, I just usually count them because it takes more work to figure out the points and then subtract them than just count. If they're bigger numbers, obviously you don't want to count to 100 if they're 100 apart.
So you just count the distance between.
Yes. So now see, now here we don't have a graph, so we have to use our formula. So our formula was m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, which is really the distance between 2 points. Like if I were to graph a point, like let's say I'm here at 0 and I go to 7, the distance between those two is 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a point 7 comma y and 0 comma y, it would be the distance between the two x values, which is what x2 minus x1 equals. So for this equation, I have m equals, and again, you get to choose which point would you like me to make 1 and which point would you like me to make 2. I can do it opposite of what I like making the first one 1. If you want, I can make the second one 1, and I can show you it makes no difference. So which way would you like me to go? You want me to do it both ways?
Yes, please.
Okay, so let's make this 1 and this 2. And I have the slope is equal to y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. This would be 4 minus minus, which is positive 6, which is 10, divided by -5, which equals -2. Or let's change it. Now we'll make this one 2 and this one 1. So I'll have m equals y2 minus y1 divided by over x2 minus x1. This equals -10 divided by +5, which is still -2. It's just notice the negative sign changed where it was, but it's still in general.
It doesn't matter how you work it out.
It doesn't matter. I promise. So if I always pick the first one as 1, it's just by habit, not by need. Okay. I really do want to prove that because I usually just pick the first one as 1 and the second one is 2, but it is just by habit. It's not a requirement. And again, we would just do the same. Graph the line with a slope of 1 and a y-intercept of 2. Well, we already know how to do that, right? We start with our intercept of 2, and our slope is 1, so we can go up 1 over 1. That's it. I start with the y-intercept, and it's 2. And so if I have 1, that's the same as 1 over 1, or you can say 2 over 2, or 3 over 3. It doesn't matter to me which point you pick. So I can go, but I'm going rise is up 1, run is up 2. Or I can say rise is up 1, run is over 2. So I have 0, 2, 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, 5, 4, 6. All right. Again, they're just telling us a starting place. So I'm starting here at -4, -2. And the slope is 2/3, which means I go up 2 and over 3, right? It doesn't matter where I start. I start wherever I start. But then from there, I put my slope. Okay, so if I start again, I start with the point. Remember, I have to have a starting place. So I go to -4, -2. That's my start. So that's my starting dot.
Yes.
And then the slope is the rise. So I'm going up 2
And
over
then
the
of course 3.
1, 2, 3. There's
Okay.
another dot. And then the rest of the line just goes. We have a couple of different forms for lines. Forms of equations of lines. So the first one we learned is called, so it's y equals mx plus b. And we call this slope intercept form. Why do we call it that? Because we have the slope and the y-intercept. We also have standard form. Standard form is ax plus by equals c, where it says they're all integers and a is greater than 0. So integers means whole numbers. You can't have fractions. And also, a has got to be positive. That's very important. And we'll do it. I'll show you. Okay. And we have a third one we haven't talked about yet, but I'll put it here. And it's called point slope. Let's see if you can guess what that means. It means so this means I know, this means I know a point and the slope. So I might as well put it in this form. If I have the slope and the y-intercept, I might as well put it in the first form. The third one would be y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. The point I know is x1, y1. Because x and y are still variables, but I do know x1 and y1. Okay?
Okay.
We haven't really worked with that yet, so we'll leave it alone for the moment. I can actually show you how to remember this last one. Actually, let me do it right now while we're talking about it. So I know that the slope of a line we talked about is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? Well, what happens if I multiply both sides by x2 minus x1? Doesn't this cancel this?
It does.
Okay, so what am I left with? I'm just going to rearrange this to m times x2 minus x1 equals y2 minus y1. But I only know one point, so the other one I have to find. So let's just erase that and erase that, and we end up with our point slope form. I just reversed the order, but you can turn it around. This is the same as y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay?
Okay.
And you'll see that we'll use it. There's times when one form is better than the other. That's all. That's why we have it in different forms. So let's start. I have y equals 3x minus 4 plus 4. Well, I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides, aren't I? Because I have to get the x's and y's on the same side. That's what that says here, right here at the top. So I get minus 3x plus y equals 4. Okay, well, we have to make sure that this is in the right form. It says integers for a, b, c. Well, those are all integers because a is -3, b is 1. There is really a 1 here, invisible 1, and c is 4. All those are integers. So I got the first part with a greater than 0. I don't have that part, do I? A is -3. So what I'm going to do is I am going to multiply both sides by -1. And I get 3x minus y equals -4. And now it's in standard form. All of them are integers. I mean, a is greater than 0. 3x minus y equals -4. And there we have it. Find the slope and the y-intercept. Well, y equals 1 minus 1/5 x. Where is the slope usually?
Where is the slope?
Yeah.
You said the slope is rising. It's at the top.
Well, what number here is the slope?
The 1.
No. The slope is always in front of the x value. We just need to change the order, and now here's the slope. I mean, you don't have to change the order, but if it helps you see what, it's not always whatever's first. It's whatever's next to the x. Remember, the equation is y equal mx plus b. And here, m is always in front of the x. Okay?
Yes.
So my slope is going to be -1/5. And my y-intercept is +1. Okay?
Yes.
But I'll show you 2 different ways to do this. Okay? Because if they don't give you point slope, I'll give you point slope. So the first way is y equals m times x plus b. They gave me the slope and they gave me 1 point. So what I can do with that is I can plug in for x2 for y minus 6. So I have -6 equals -1/2 times 2 plus b. -6 equals -1 plus b. I add 1 to both sides. I get -5 equals b. So I know my equation. Y equals -1/2 x minus 5. Okay.
Mhm.
Another way we can do it, and you can choose, is we have that point slope that that hasn't been shown yet. So I told you about it. I could say y minus 6, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay. I get y plus 6 equals negative 1/2 x plus 1. Negative times negative is positive. 2 over 2 is 1. I can subtract 6 from both sides. And I have y equals, because the 6's will disappear, negative 1/2 minus 5. 1 minus 6 is minus 5. But look, it doesn't matter how I do it. The line.
You get the same
Same.
answer.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So it's really sometimes just a matter of choice. Let's see. How do I put this in? I think we might have to put parentheses around this. Because without the parentheses, it looks like the x is times 2, but it's not. It's times negative 1/2. Oh, I forgot my x here. So, and then minus 5. I wonder if I'm pretty sure if I leave off my parentheses, it's going to be wrong. We'll see what it looks like. Oh, actually, it takes it like that as well. It shouldn't, by the way, because that looks like minus 1 over 2x to me. So I'm going to teach you the right way to do it, even though the software is not, but it looks like either way would work. Okay. And there you have it. So we have a line passes that point and has a slope of negative 1/7. So since I have a point and the slope, I can use point slope, which is exactly what they're saying. Write the equation in point slope. Okay, so we have y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So that means I have y. Well, y1 is the only y I know, is 5. So we have y minus 5 equals m. Well, I know my slope is negative 1/7 times x minus, well, my x is negative 2. So I get y minus 5 equals negative 1/7 times x plus 2. And that is my equation in point slope. We've already done one of those. Same. Okay, so we talked a little about horizontal and vertical lines. Remember, a vertical line was the one that was straight up and down. So if I have a grid, here would be my vertical line. Horizontal if I have a grid, this would be my horizontal line. This horizontal line is y equals some value. I'm just going to say A, where this is A. And here this is x equals B, where it crosses the axis, it's B. And so if I want a vertical line, I want x equals, and it would be 1. Horizontal line is y equals, and it's going to be 2. And that's it. Now we're going to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. So parallel lines have the same slope. So if I have a graph and I have a line here, a line parallel to it, parallel means they never touch, like railroad tracks. They go the same direction. So there's always going to be equal space between them. They have to have the same slope. The only thing that'll be different is they would have different y-intercepts. Perpendicular have slopes that are negative reciprocals. Let me explain what that means. So if I have the slope of the first line is equal to 1/2, the slope of the line that's perpendicular, and I'm going to write this little thing, perpendicular lines actually are lines that when they cross form 90-degree angles. Let me show you. So if I have a line like this, my perpendicular line would go like this, where these are all 90-degree angles. So that means that if the slope of the first line is 1/2, the slope of the second line is negative of that, because that's the only way they can really cross at 90-degree angles. If one's positive, then the other has to be negative, or vice versa. And then it would be 2/1. The reciprocal just means, so the reciprocal means that we flip the fraction. All right. So consider the line y equals -7 minus 1/7 x. We're going to put this into our slope-intercept form, which I think will be easier for you to see. I'm just changing the x and the constant. So what is the slope of the line perpendicular to this? Well, if the slope is equal to -1/7, then the perpendicular slope is positive, because it's the negative of that, which would make it positive, and it would be 7/1, which is 7. The slope of the line parallel is exactly the same as the original slope, so it's -1/7. This is exactly the same. I just put it into, first I have to find the slope. No matter what I do, I have to find the slope. I already showed you how to find the slope. After that, I know the slope of the line parallel is exactly the same, and the slope of the line perpendicular is the negative reciprocal. I'll do one more. Okay. So I have -8x plus 3y equals 9. So I want it to be y equals mx plus b, so I can find my slope. So I'm going to add 8x to both sides. And then I have 3y equals 8x plus 9. I divide both sides by 3, which really means I divide everything by 3. And I get y equals 8/3 x plus 3. Now I know my slope, 8/3. So that's going to be the same as the slope that's parallel. My perpendicular slope, so my parallel slope is 8/3, and my perpendicular slope is the negative reciprocal. Remember, reciprocal means I just flip the fraction. And that is going to be my perpendicular slope. Now, this is a great time to use point slope. Why? Because they give me a point and I know I can find the slope. So my slope for this line, y equals m. This is my m times x plus 6. So I know my slope. My line parallel, if I use point slope, and notice they're not telling me which way to do it. I can use point slope. So I can say parallel is y minus 2 equals m, which is 1/2, times x minus 1. So I have y plus 2 equals 1/2 x minus 1. This is parallel, and it's in point slope. It's not a problem for it to be in point slope. Just leave it in point slope. Unless it says you have to put it in slope intercept or standard form, it doesn't matter what form you put it in. So here I have y plus 2. Y plus 2 is equal to 1/2 times x minus 1. Now, look how easy this is going to be. Perpendicular. I have y plus 2 equals, I have the same point. The only thing I have to do is change the slope. Negative reciprocal. That's it. So I have the same exact thing. Let me see if I can be lazy and just copy, paste. And then this would be -2. And that's it.